The room spun with champagne and noise, but I heard her voice as clear as crystal. "We didn't invite him, did we?" The bride laughing, dismissing. My hand tightened on my cane. I turned just enough to catch my son's face. He didn't correct her, didn't say a word, just smiled and reached for another glass. I had worn my best suit, pressed it myself, tied Barbara's favorite paisley tie 3 times until it sat just right. She always said it made my eyes look kinder. They sat me near the back, next to a speaker buzzing faintly with static. A floral centerpiece blocked half the table. No one removed it. "Glad you could make it," my son muttered when he passed by. No hug, no handshake. I watched them toast, speech after speech. Her father was praised, her mother was called a queen, and me. Not a mention. No one said who paid for the venue, the catering, the live band playing the song Barbara and I once danced to in our driveway during a thunderstorm. I sat still, too still, my throat dry from silence, not champagne. I thought of Barbara, how she'd run numbers on a napkin, budgeting every penny after her diagnosis. "Make sure it's clean," she'd told me about the account we'd set aside. "No joint names, just you." She trusted me, and I trusted our son. That was my mistake. If anyone's listening, don't make the mistake I did. They cut the cake, smeared frosting on each other's noses, kissed like the world owed them something. And I finally stood. I nodded to the waiter who recognized me. He offered a soft smile, the only one I got that day. Back at home, I removed the tie. It smelled faintly of lavender, Barbara's scent. I set it beside her photo on the mantel. Her smile hadn't changed, but everything else had. I pulled out the accordion folder from the desk drawer. Bank statements, canceled checks, wedding deposits with my signature, all of it in ink. Every receipt, every transaction meticulously filed under gifts. Not because I was proud, but because I believed they'd remember. They didn't. I flipped through them, feeling the weight of every dollar. My hand paused over the final florist invoice. 12 centerpieces, each $145, paid in full. The name on the receipt, mine. Not hers, not theirs. I leaned back, the house quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant tick of Barbara's old kitchen clock. I opened a new envelope. On the front I wrote, "For Helen, if they ever forget again." Then I sealed it and set it gently beside her photo. 3 days after the wedding, the house was quieter than usual. No thank you call, no postcard, just silence, the kind that seeps into your bones. I was reaching for the coffee tin when I saw the envelope. The bank's return address sat in the corner like a warning. Inside, a wire transfer confirmation, nearly $19,000. My name listed clearly under origin of funds. The destination, a boutique travel agency in Florence. Honeymoon. I blinked once, twice. I hadn't signed anything. I called the bank. A kind voice confirmed it. "Yes, Mr. Andrews, this transfer was processed using the signature on file. No cosigner." I hung up. My hand trembled slightly, not from age, from something else. The kind of shake that comes from betrayal. I dialed my son. He picked up on the second ring. "Hey Dad, everything okay? Did you use my account to pay for your trip?" A pause, then a chuckle. "You said it was your gift." "I never said that." "Come on, it was obvious. The way you handled the wedding, the bills, we figured." "You figured wrong." He scoffed. "It's not like you're hurting for money. Barbara left you plenty." He said her name like it was a convenience store. I ended the call. That night I opened the same folder from the reception, added the wire receipt, printed out the call log. I wasn't angry, not yet. I needed clarity, not just memory, proof. I stared at the documents, wishing Barbara were beside me. She would have known what to say. Instead, I typed out an email to Helen, just the subject line, "Need your eyes." Attached were PDFs, receipts, my original estate plan, and a short note. They didn't ask, they just took. Her reply came an hour later. "You've got leverage, let's use it." I leaned back in my chair, let the weight of those words settle. My silence won't protect them anymore. I turned on the hallway light, walked into our old study. Her scarf still hung on the chair. I touched it gently, then opened the locked drawer beneath. Inside, our original trust document, Barbara's signature, mine notarized, a line she insisted on adding. No funds may be withdrawn or transferred without written consent. It had been her final addition, her way of saying, "I trust you, but not the world after me." I folded the paper and placed it next to the receipts. Outside, the wind brushed softly against the windows. My house was still. But something inside me had shifted. I wasn't just an old man anymore. I was the ledger they forgot had teeth. People think betrayal sounds like shouting. It doesn't. Sometimes it's laughter in a room that pretends you're not there. The invitation came 2 days before a welcome home party, as they called it. My son's wife made the call. Her voice was sweet, brittle, like a candy shell over vinegar. "We'd love for you to come, just a casual dinner, family." I hesitated, but I said yes. Barbara would have told me not to, but she's not here to warn me anymore. The house looked different when I walked in. New rugs, my bookshelf gone. The piano had been shoved into the corner. Someone had draped it with fairy lights like it was some kind of prop. "Oh, Dad, you made it," she said with a practiced smile, not meeting my eyes. I nodded, wasn't sure I'd recognize the place. Laughter around the room. Someone offered me wine. I took it, not because I wanted it, but because I needed something to hold. They made a toast before dessert. My daughter-in-law stood on a chair, her voice bubbly. "We started our life with nothing," she said, wrapping an arm around my son. "No help, just love, just each other." Applause, cheers. I sat frozen, wine glass in hand, my jaw clenched. No help. I looked at my son. He didn't glance my way, just kept smiling, raising his glass like the rest. I didn't touch my dinner after that. I couldn't taste it anyway. I felt like furniture. After most of the guests left, I asked my son to talk privately. We stood in the hallway near the coat rack, my coat still hanging where I'd left it. "I saw the toast," I said. "Heard it, I mean." He sighed. "It was just a joke." "No," I said, "it was a rewrite." He frowned. "Dad, what do you want?" "I want to know when you'll pay me back. The catering, the venue, the honeymoon." His shoulders stiffened. "It's done, we're married. Why are you digging this up?" "Because I didn't give you permission, and you knew it." He scoffed. "You're acting like a victim. You're not, you're just old." I let that hang in the air. Then I said, very softly, "Not yet." He stared. "What does that mean?" I didn't answer. In my car, I sat in the dark and wrote on a napkin, his exact words, "Everyone. You're acting like a victim. You're just old." Because in court, every word matters. The sky outside was pale with moonlight, the kind Barbara loved. I folded the napkin carefully, slid it into the same envelope with the bank records. One more piece for the fire they don't know they lit. Some betrayals don't scream. They hum, like a wrong note played on a familiar piano. Helen sat across from me, her glasses low on her nose, scanning the files I'd brought. Bank records, wire transfers, authorization slips I never signed. Then she paused. Her finger tapped a line on the screen. This wasn't from your personal account." I leaned in. "What do you mean?" She adjusted the screen so I could see. "This transfer here, it's from the Barbara A. Mitchell Community Fund, your wife's memorial trust." I stopped breathing. "That account," I whispered. "It was only for the program, for the music scholarships." She nodded grimly. "It was protected, meant to stay untouched until the next fiscal review, But your son, he used your credentials. I have the log history. The IP matched his. I sat back, my chest tightened not with rage but grief. Barbara's trust, her dream, her legacy for young pianists stolen for napkins and flower walls. Is it gone? I asked. Helen shook her head. Not all, but a large chunk funded the wedding venue and catering. Silence settled between us like dust. I closed my eyes. I could see Barbara in that dusty church hall, teaching children to play chords with fingers too small for octaves. Her smile when the first scholarship was awarded. The trust was never about money. It was about her heart. He used her grave as an ATM, I said quietly. Helen didn't reply. She didn't have to. She slid a folder toward me. This is a motion to freeze the remaining trust assets. We can also file for restitution since you're still the named trustee. He broke compliance. I opened the folder. The papers inside trembled slightly in my hand, but my voice was steady. Will the program still run? If we act now, yes. The rest can be recovered. It'll take time, but justice usually does. I nodded, picked up the pen. Let's do it. As I signed, I felt something settle inside me. Not vengeance, not fury, just clarity. He doesn't know yet, I thought, but the music will play, just not the tune he expected. Helen placed a hand gently on the papers. I'll file by morning. I stood. Thank you, Helen, for still being here. She smiled softly. Barbara would have raised hell, you know. I know, I said, but I was always the quiet one until now. The wind outside was colder than I remembered, sharp and clean. I walked home slowly, coat zipped high, breath fogging in the dark. Leaves scuttled across the sidewalk like whispers. But my steps didn't falter. Barbara's piano waited by the window. And so did the silence. A silence I was ready to fill. There's a silence that comes before truth is spoken, not peace, tension, like the stillness before a storm breaks. I brought the ledger in a plain brown envelope. No dramatics, just facts. Sunday brunch was their idea to clear the air, they'd said. The table was already set when I arrived. Crystal glasses, sliced melon, my seat at the far end untouched. Symbolic. My son stood as I entered. Dad, glad you made it. His wife didn't stand, just offered a tight smile and returned to buttering toast like I wasn't worth a full glance. I took my seat slowly, letting the cane settle by my leg. I brought something. I slid the envelope across the table. My son frowned but opened it. What is this? Every dollar, I said. Every withdrawal, every charge from my accounts in Barbara's trust. His eyes moved quickly, scanning lines. His brow twitched. I kept receipts, records for clarity. His wife leaned over to peek. Oh, come on, you're keeping score now. What, you gonna sue us? I looked at her, calm, not cold, just steady. No, I said, I'm just reclaiming what was stolen. Their smirks cracked. I reached for my tea and added, the trust lawyer has already filed an injunction. Access is frozen. Restitution is in motion. My son sat back, blinking. You wouldn't. I did. His wife scoffed. You're making this ugly. I leaned forward. It became ugly the moment you used Barbara's name to fund hors d'oeuvres. He pushed the papers away like they were burning him. It was just a misunderstanding. No, I said, it was calculated and cowardly. The clock on the wall ticked loud, now that the room had fallen so still. She trusted me to carry her name forward, I added. You treated it like a discount card. My daughter-in-law crossed her arms. You're just bitter. I sipped my tea, let the heat settle in my chest, then I smiled. No, I'm awake. My son opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His eyes flicked from the papers to my face, searching for the old man he used to dismiss. He didn't find him. I'm not here to fight, I said quietly. I'm here to draw the line, Past this point, you don't walk all over my silence." My son's voice was barely a whisper. "Dad, we didn't mean to." "You did," I cut in. "You just didn't think I'd notice." I stood, my hand steady, my plate untouched. "I'll let the court sort the rest." As I walked out, I heard her whisper, "He's serious." And I was. Outside, the breeze tugged at my coat, soft but sharp. Barbara once said justice wasn't loud, it was deliberate. And today, it wore a checkbook and a ledger. The knock of justice is never loud, but it lands like thunder when it comes. They received the summons on a Thursday. By Friday morning, my phone rang. "Dad," my son said, voice tight, "this is humiliating. Let's talk, please." I waited a beat. "All right," I said, "Helen's office, Monday morning." Silence, then a sigh. "Okay." He didn't ask why it couldn't be just us. He knew. Helen greeted me with her usual calm, papers already laid out in neat stacks, her glasses perched low on her nose, eyes sharp. They arrived late. His wife wore sunglasses indoors. My son kept smoothing his tie like a wrinkle could undo the truth. Helen didn't bother with small talk. "This is discovery," she said. "We'll be reviewing account activity, documentation, and statements regarding the misuse of the late Barbara's trust and Mr. Foster's estate." My son shifted. His wife crossed her arms. "We didn't know it was restricted," she mumbled. Helen didn't flinch. Ignorance is not a defense. She turned over a sheet. "On June 5th, your honeymoon flights were booked from this account." Another sheet. "June 12th, venue paid in full." My son tried, but Dad said. "I said no such thing," I cut in, my voice steady, "and you know it." Helen handed them the wire transfer record. This was executed without consent, signed digitally, from a shared device. "Traced to your home IP." His wife's jaw dropped. "That's not fair." Helen arched a brow. "You used a memorial fund meant for music programs in Barbara's name. Fairness left when that wire cleared." They had no words, just stunned silence. Helen slid forward the restitution plan. "Court has already reviewed the motion. We're not here to debate the past, just to confirm the terms." I leaned in. I requested one clause. My son glanced up wary. "What clause?" I looked him in the eyes. "Community service, 2 months, at the shelter where your mother volunteered." He blinked. "You're joking." "I'm not." His wife scoffed. "You want us to work with bums." Helen snapped her folder shut. "That'll be noted for the judge." My son held his head. "This is insane." "No," I said. "This is clarity. Let them see what giving actually looks like." He slumped back, defeated. The papers were signed. When it was over, I stood slowly. Helen touched my arm. "Barbara would have been proud." I nodded. I didn't speak. That night I sat on the porch. The wind brushed the wind chime, the one she used to hum along with. And for a moment I felt her. Not in the silence, but in the justice. Her hand on my shoulder, light, certain. I didn't smile. But I didn't cry either. Justice, like grief, doesn't always need applause. The silence of Thanksgiving was louder than any insult. No call, no card, no invitation. The house used to buzz by noon, laughter from the kitchen, shoes piled by the door, Barbara's hands moving over the tablecloth she brought out once a year, the one with embroidered leaves. Now the house was still. I heated a small dish of mashed potatoes, ate slowly. No TV, no distractions, just the quiet rhythm of the fork against the plate. I wasn't lonely, not really. Just reminded. A knock broke the silence. I opened the door to find Mrs. Ellsworth from down the road, her hands balancing a warm apple pie. "I figured you shouldn't have to spend the holiday without something sweet," she said. I invited her in. We sat in the living room and I brewed some coffee. Barbara's old roast still sat in the cupboard, sealed like a memory. She looked around the room, eyes soft. She really made this place a home, didn't she? I nodded and reached for the photo album on the side table. Flipping through, I stopped at our wedding picture, Barbara in that cream dress with lace at the sleeves. Me in a rented suit, grinning like a man who couldn't believe his luck. That was the same year we bought the house, I said. Took us 20 years to pay it off. She picked out every fixture. Every corner has her handwriting. Mrs. Ellsworth smiled. Not many houses feel like stories, this one does. I stared at the photo long after she left. Pie warm in the kitchen, coffee scent fatting into the air. My daughter-in-law once called this place outdated, said it had too much history. She didn't understand history is what holds a home together when people forget to. That night I sat at my desk, pulled out the manila envelope labeled estate. The will hadn't been updated in years. I crossed out my son's name, then hers. Every cent of the estate, every asset, every corner of the house they mocked, it would go to Barbara's music program and the shelter that helped her find peace after chemo. I paused at the section marked contingent beneficiaries. Then I wrote, to those who would have pulled out a chair without being asked. The pen felt steady in my hand. I sealed the envelope again. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees Barbara had planted decades ago, one for each of our children. Their branches bent, not broken. The dining table sat untouched, but I didn't feel empty. I felt clear. Thanksgiving had come and gone. And so had my illusions. Barbara used to say music could stitch things back together, hearts, families, even time. Tonight I tested her theory. The chairs at the youth center were mismatched and squeaky. The walls were chipped and the lights flickered once or twice, but the stage glowed. Small feet tapped in nervous rhythm behind the curtain. Sheet music rustled in anxious hands. And then sound. A violin began, soft and unsure, followed by a hesitant trumpet. Then a drum beat, steady like a heartbeat. Voices joined, young, clear, full of the kind of hope I thought I'd forgotten how to hear. The children played their hearts out. I sat in the second row, Barbara's scarf tucked into my coat pocket. A girl with braces sang, "Somewhere Over the Rainbow." Her mother wiped away tears in the back. A boy in a wheelchair played keyboard like his fingers had stories of their own. Every note was a brick in something better. When the concert ended, there was polite applause at first, then something bigger, a wave of it, parents standing, kids bowing. I stood too, clearing my throat. "I just want to say a few words," I said. The room quieted, 100 eyes turned. "This concert wasn't my idea," I began. "It was Barbara's. Years ago, after her diagnosis, she set aside a trust, not for herself, not for a legacy in her name, but for music. For this." I gestured toward the stage. She said, "I don't want a reception when I go, I want a beginning. Tonight you gave her that." I didn't cry, not then. A little boy in a yellow sweater walked up to me, gripping a handmade card in crayon. "Thank you, Mr. H," he said. "I didn't have a piano, now I do." I knelt to take the card. "You keep playing, all right." He nodded so hard his glasses slipped. I walked outside, the night cool but not cold. The sidewalk sparkled faintly under the streetlight, the kind of glow Barbara always said looked like magic when it rained. I opened the card in the quiet. Inside, stick figures danced around a rainbow piano. One had silver hair and a cane. Above it, a child had written in crooked letters, "You made music happen." It felt more sincere than every wedding toast combined. Not loud, not flashy. Just real. Legacy, I realized, isn't a last name on a building. It's a first note in someone else's song. I tucked the card into my coat. Barbara would have stood beside me tonight, hand over mine. I could almost feel it. And for the first time in months, I didn't ache. I felt tuned. The envelope had his handwriting. Slanted, careful, the same way he used to write "Happy Birthday, Dad" on crayon cards before he knew what money was. I held it for a moment, thumb pressed against the edge like it might burn. Then I opened it. "Dad," it began, "I don't know how to explain what happened. We were overwhelmed. We made mistakes. I made mistakes. I miss you. I want to make things right." He mentioned therapy, regret, even offered to meet on neutral ground. It wasn't angry, it was small, tired. 3 pages of apologies and carefully chosen words, words that didn't bruise anymore. I set it down, exhaled through my nose. Later that day, a second envelope arrived, softer handwriting flowing. "Sorry. Dear Mr. H," it read. "I'm not sure I deserve a second chance, but I'm asking anyway. We got caught up. We thought we knew what was fair, but we didn't understand the full story. I see that now. If you're open to it, I'd like to visit just to talk. No expectations." She added a photo of the two of them, a vacation picture. They looked happy, or at least practiced at pretending. I sat with both letters on the table, the sun slanting across the wood like a spotlight. They were asking for a do-over, a chance to rewind time to before the toasts, before the trust, before the theft. But I wasn't looking to rewind anything. Forgiveness doesn't always mean reunion. I folded each letter slowly, deliberately. Walked to the study, opened the drawer where I kept documents from Barbara's estate, and slipped them in beneath the medical forms, the hospice notes, the last card she wrote me before the morphine dulled her hands. Then I labeled the folder, "Closed." Not in anger, not in triumph, just truth. I didn't need revenge anymore. I didn't need an apology to undo what had been done. I needed peace. I stepped outside, gloves in hand, and walked to the garden. Barbara's roses were in bloom, late, defiant. I crouched beside the nearest bush and began watering, careful not to drown the roots. Her roses always had sharp thorns. She used to joke, "Beauty bites if you grab it too fast." Back then, I didn't understand. Now I smiled. I touched one petal soft as breath. A thorn pricked my glove. I didn't flinch. Pain isn't always a warning. Sometimes it's just memory. The letter stayed in the drawer. I stayed in the garden. And the silence, for once, didn't feel like absence. It felt like an answer. The mailbox rattled in the morning breeze. I picked up the final envelope with no hesitation. Inside was the trust report. Months of legal wrangling, emails, motions, and reconciliations condensed into neat, crisp pages. I opened it. Restitution complete. Every unauthorized withdrawal returned. Every misused dollar accounted for. The shelter had expanded. More rooms, more beds, more lives touched by the fund Barbara had started years ago. The music program had been renamed in her honor. I scanned to the bottom. Total assets recovered, $184,000, all in cash. I smiled. They had thought me old and poor, weak, silent, gullible. I had been patient, quiet, observing, calculating, and very, very prepared. I walked into the backyard. The tree we planted the year my son was born stretched overhead, branches sturdy, leaves turning gold with autumn. I ran my hand along the rough bark. "You forgot who built this," I whispered, barely audible. No one answered. No one needed to. I closed my eyes, listening to the soft rustle of leaves, the distant hum of traffic, the faint laughter of children from the shelter, their voices weaving through the afternoon air. A crow called once, then flew away. I felt the weight of months lift, replaced by something steadier, calm, dignity. Justice not shouted, not flaunted, but quietly delivered. The house, the trust, the program, all intact. Barbara's vision honored, my patience rewarded. I thought of my son, his letters full of apologies that no longer mattered, his wife asking to start over, unaware that some things can't be reset with words. I didn't need to reply. Some victories aren't loud. They don't require confrontation. They settle in quietly, like shadows stretching at dusk, and hold their weight without explanation. I sank onto the bench beneath the tree. The breeze carried a tune through the branches, a soft, familiar melody, Barbara's favorite piano piece, humming in memory. I sipped my tea, warm, steady. For a moment I allowed myself to imagine her here, hand resting lightly on mine, eyes calm, approving. I didn't need applause. I didn't need acknowledgement. The record stood on paper, in law, in action. Outside, the world carried on. Cars passed, leaves fell, children played, the shelter doors opened and closed, lives moved forward. I closed the report, folded it neatly, and placed it on the mantel beside her photo. The sun dipped lower. Golden light spilled across the lawn, brushing the edges of the house. I let the breeze hum its quiet tune again. And I knew, finally, completely, I had the last word. Without saying a thing. The mailbox clanged in the morning sun, and I picked up the envelope with calm certainty. No hesitation, no anticipation, only the slow, measured patience that had carried me through months of watching, documenting, and waiting. Inside was the final trust report. Crisp pages, typed letters, and bold headings. Restitution complete. Every dollar they'd taken, every unauthorized withdrawal accounted for. The shelter had grown. Rooms multiplied, beds filled, lives touched. The music program Barbara had envisioned had been renamed in her honor. A quiet legacy, alive and thriving. I scanned the final line. My eyes lingered. Total assets recovered. $184,000, all in cash. I smiled, a slow, deliberate curve. They had thought me old, gullible, poor, silent, dismissible. I had been none of those things. Quiet, yes. Patient, yes. Observant, deliberate, and very, very prepared. I stepped into the backyard, fingers brushing the rough bark of the tree we planted the year my son was born. Its branches reached skyward, steadfast. Its leaves whispered with the wind. "You forgot who built this," I whispered, barely audible, letting the words roll into the crisp air. No one answered. No one needed to. I closed my eyes. The faint rustle of leaves mingled with the distant laughter of children from the shelter, notes of music drifting through the air. A crow cawed and flew away, unbothered. I felt months of tension fall away, replaced with clarity, dignity, and quiet satisfaction. Barbara's dream had survived not by loud proclamation, not through shouting, but by persistence, careful planning, and unwavering commitment. I thought briefly of my son, his letters full of apologies, his wife's requests to start over. They were irrelevant now. Some things could not be undone with words. I didn't need to reply. Silence was enough. Some victories are quiet. They don't require acknowledgement, only persistence. They settle in, steady and absolute, like shadows lengthening at dusk. I sank onto the bench beneath the tree. The breeze carried a melody through the branches, faint but familiar, Barbara's favorite piano piece, remembered in memory, alive in spirit. I sipped my tea, warm, steady, unrushed. For a moment I allowed myself to imagine her hand on mine, her eyes calm and approving. No words, no gestures, just presence. Outside, life continued. Leaves drifted, cars passed, children's laughter rang in waves from the shelter. The world moved forward. I closed the report, folded it carefully, and placed it beside her photograph on the mantel. The sun dipped lower. Light spilled across the lawn, brushing the edges of the house with gold. The breeze carried the faintest tune through the yard once more. And I knew completely, finally, that I had the last word. Without saying a thing,